Let's notice where our feet and legs are in contact with the cushion or the floor or anything else. We're going to sink with our awareness down to our feet and legs. And let's bring our attention to our hands, allowing them to rest gently wherever they'd like to be. If we notice effort in the hands, let's see if we can relax and let that go. We soften and relax the shoulders, bringing spaciousness to the area. Bring your awareness to the mouth and jaw area, softening and relaxing there. Bringing spaciousness and relaxation into the mouth and jaw area, including the lips. And as we relax, let's see if we notice the calm and peaceful feeling starting to bubble up or spread. And this is a gentle relaxation with a tone of self-compassion. If you haven't already done so and it feels relaxing for you, gently allow your eyes to close. And if you prefer to keep your eyes open, just let your gaze be soft and slightly downward. You're invited to take a deep breath if that feels good. Breathing in deeply and out slowly. In and out. We breathe in peace and relaxation. We breathe out concerns, worries, and tension. In and out. In and out. We return to a natural breath, just a relaxing, calm breath, gentle and peaceful. We bring our awareness to the very top of the head and imagine relaxing energy flowing down from the top of the head. You do this without judgment or commentary. Relax and soften the muscles on the forehead, the brow, eye sockets, face, ears, and neck. Notice relaxing energy coming down to the shoulders, the upper arms, the lower arms, past the wrists to the hands, and then the very tips of the fingers. We relax the chest, the abdomen, upper back, lower back, the waist, the bottom, bringing relaxation to the upper legs, the lower legs, past the ankles to the feet, and to the very tips of the toes. The relaxing energy is bathing the whole body, the feeling of calm, peacefulness, and gentleness. Gently bring your awareness to rest at the center of the body, around the stomach area, just above your navel. We rest our awareness at the center very gently. It's a gentle resting, like when a feather comes to rest when it falls on the surface of the water. The gentle resting of a butterfly on a petal of a flower. When the wind blows, the butterfly moves along with the flower in harmony with it. As we still the body, the mind becomes still. The mind and awareness settle into the center of the body. If you notice a peaceful feeling in the center, no matter how small, you notice that it can ripple out from the center to our whole bodies, out into the room and beyond. If thoughts come, we notice them without judgment or attachment. We let them pass like birds. We don't engage with them. We observe them passing by. If a big thought comes, we might think of it as a bus that comes by and opens its door, inviting us to get on board. And we say, no, thank you. Let the door close and let the thought pass on. If the mind is very active, you could bring an image of something shiny and bright to the center of your body. The sun, moon, stars, and rest your awareness on it. If there are many thoughts, you could rest your attention on the sound of the mantra. Sama Arahang, Sama Arahang, Sama Arahang. We maintain a calm, gentle, peaceful feeling, resting awareness at the center. Everything is sinking down to the center. We let the thoughts go without engaging with them. We enjoy any nice feeling of peace, calmness, and light at the center without judgment and with self compassion. And we'll continue this resting in silence for a little while. In a few minutes, a single chime will end this formal sitting. Let's use this time to offer metta to ourselves and others. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I feel safe. May I live with ease. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings feel safe. May all beings live with ease. You could gently let your eyes open, maintaining this peaceful feeling as we come out of our meditation. And let's just take a few moments to stretch and refresh to prepare for our wisdom talk. I'll see you in a few minutes. Hi, everybody. I think we're going to make our way back and get started. Okie doke. I trust I can still be heard. Great.
Yes, we hear you.
Terrific. I think, host, I need to be able to share my screen, if I may.
Getting it set up for you.
Sure. I'm so grateful for the little messages that Zoom sends, so you just don't feel like you're free falling.
I think it should allow you. See if it works now.
Yep. Terrific. Oh, that's interesting. I'm getting a new special screen that I've never had before.
You want to tell me what it is? Maybe I can help you.
Sure. It says Zoom US will not be able to, oh, it's talking to me about recording. Well, luckily I don't. That's not my job.
Good. Yeah, and it is recording.
Okay. Okay, good. So with any luck at all, this is going to let me do this. There we go. Beautiful. Okie doke. So today's topic is accepting impermanence in an anti-aging social media culture. It's tough because, spoiler alert, when it comes to impermanence, We are all mixed up. Now, before we dive in, talking about impermanence at this time, there's an elephant in the room, and her name is COVID-19. It may seem strange not to focus on the pandemic in this talk, but here's my thinking. This pandemic has obviously affected us in very real ways. There's no doubt that it is causing changes in our lives, short-term and long-term, many of them undesirable and some existentially threatening. And I'm also finding that it's serving as a lens, bringing into clear focus tendencies, assumptions, and values we may have been largely unaware of. This is what the talk is really about. What attitudes regarding impermanence have we been unconsciously cultivating with the help of corporate America and social media? I hope that by shedding light on this, we might be able to lessen our suffering in the current situation and emerge from this pandemic a bit more accepting of impermanence. As long as I can remember, my dad was telling stories. His audience members fell into one of two groups. There were those who took a deep breath when, 3 lines in, they knew they'd heard this one before. Then there were those like me, who could hear the same good story 100 times and still enjoy it. The story of when Siddhartha Gautama first left the palace with the charioteer Shana is one of those stories for me. I never tire of it, whether I'm reading it or hearing it. As most of you likely know, it was on this outing that Siddhartha experienced 4 sightings. It was the first time he saw aging, disease, death, and an ascetic. The common theme for the first 3 of the sightings was impermanence. So the story's been on my mind as I've been considering the topic for this week. The 4th sighting was an ascetic who represents freedom from the suffering of aging, disease, and death. Recently, my mind started to wander to imagining what might have happened had Siddhartha lived now rather than over 2,500 years ago. He'd probably be on social media, and on social media, he'd see mostly happy, youthful people celebrating one thing or another, immortalized. As a wealthy, well-connected kid, perhaps he'd live on Fifth Avenue. If he went out with his babysitter or later alone in his neighborhood, he might not see people showing signs of aging. He might see women who had had work done. His friends' moms and dads might not seem to have changed much over the years. He'd see lots of young people, and he might have caught a glimpse of a different kind of person quickly being moved into or out of a car and then whisked away. The more he ventured out of the neighborhood, in addition to seeing people who live on the street, he'd see more and more disparity of all kinds. More visions of age, and perhaps some people who were differently abled. And he'd see people jogging and exercising. Unless he happened by an urgent care or a funeral home and asked what they were, illness or death might not have crossed his path. Mostly, I think the Buddha would have seen many people who had expended effort, time, and money pushing back against their inevitable aging. But he wouldn't have known what he was seeing. He also would have learned that we keep illness and death behind closed doors whenever possible. It would have been a very different experience, and it's hard to imagine its being as transformational. Perhaps he would have become a community organizer or a social worker. He was actually both of those things. But perhaps he would not have moved on to being a spiritual leader. Going back to the Buddha's times, impermanence is one of the Buddha's 3 marks of existence, along with dissatisfaction or suffering, and non-self or emptiness. These struggles have been with us for a very long time. Zeroing in on impermanence, let's visit some teachings from the Buddha. All conditioned phenomena are impermanent. When one sees this with insight wisdom, one becomes weary of dukkha. This is the path to purity. All conditioned things are subject to change. When one realizes this truth, one feels weary of these suffering heaps. This is the way of purification. As we know, people have struggled to accept impermanence for thousands of years. A while ago, I passed my halfway point in this life, and it was a bit unsettling. There's a tendency for us to think that our time is more challenging than any other. And while I'm sure that's not true, it does seem to me that our difficulty accepting impermanence is increased because of two modern issues: views toward aging and death, an anti-aging mentality, and the desire to freeze perceptions of ourselves in time. That's where social media comes in. Let's start by looking to science to better understand attitudes toward aging. A large study conducted in 2009 reported and compared perceptions of aging across 26 cultures. The findings are fairly specific. Progressivism. Conceivably, progressivism shifts us in values that may erode traditional notions that older adults deserve respect and authority just because of their age. Education and age of population. Respondents from cultures with an older population and more educated populations endorsed larger increases in wisdom with age. And finally, the percentage of time spent in intergenerational contact. At the individual level, more frequent contact with older adults was associated with more positive aging perceptions. However, at the cultural level, a higher proportion of older adults did not translate into more frequent intergenerational contacts. This finding is consistent with the notion that modernizing influences erode multi-generational family structures. And if we look at the statistics for this country, we're seeing that we are going to have more older adults than ever before, but this is not necessarily going to increase the contact between the generations. Science can also offer us different theoretical perspectives on the relationship between aging citizens and the rest of society. As we look at these, you may recognize features of them in our society. You may even notice that you've internalized some of these negative perspectives yourself. There's the theory that to enable younger people to assume important roles, society must encourage its older people to disengage from their previous roles. Then there's the theory that older people benefit themselves and their society if they continue to be active. And then there's conflict theory. Older people experience age-based prejudice and discrimination. And finally, on the topic of anti-aging propaganda, Nicole Pidgeon's 2014 research review lays out the issue pretty clearly. I won't read the entire passage, but the presence of anti-aging medicine is constantly driven into the minds of individuals throughout society, as the message being sent clearly suggests the process of aging is a negative. There's an implication that aging is a disease in need of a cure, and that through the use of anti-aging propaganda, society is under the impression that everything to do with aging, such as wrinkles, gray hair, baldness, hearing and vision changes, are things to be ashamed of and that are unacceptable by society's standards. Ageism, as capitalism, sees the young as powerful, prosperous, and beautiful, while old is seen as weak, non-productive, and ugly. It's no secret that the advertising and marketing mechanisms of our capitalist society is based on messages that we are not enough and we don't have enough. But the anti-aging industry sends a more targeted message. The modern anti-aging industry was started in the early 20th century by Helena Rubinstein and Elizabeth Arden. The author, Mark Tungate, writes, on the one hand, their products pleased, pampered, and yes, beautified millions of women. On the other, their advertising copy contrived to persuade their customers that aging was not only undesirable, but somehow shameful. In 2018, the global anti-aging market was estimated to be worth about $50.2 billion. It includes products, procedures, and devices. The top 5 countries for elective cosmetic surgery: South Korea, Brazil, Colombia, the US, and France. In the last few years, the phrase anti-aging has fallen out of favor with some consumers, so the word revitalization was swapped in, which is understood in the industry as a code word for anti-aging. Part of this is telling women, especially, that we should fight aging. We should be in an adversarial relationship with aging, starting as early as our late 20s, as far as I can see. Liberation as a woman is tied to perpetual youth. What could be more perfect? To sell products, procedures, and devices to stave off an inevitable process. There are also other industries which may appeal to and perpetuate subtle or not so subtle anti-aging attitudes. Many of these industries depend on an aging population, particularly women, to feel bad about their own aging process. However, all of these industries can operate without an anti-aging agenda, with a positive, healthy orientation. If you think about the facts of our time, pandemic aside, we live longer than ever before, we have more leisure time than ever before, we have more freedom of activities than ever before. So these are all good reasons to want to take care of our bodies. At the end of the day, what's the harm if we have a little nip tuck, apply serums every night, or color our hair? There may be no harm, but I would suggest that if maintaining and improving the condition of the physical body is our primary focus, we are neglecting a lot. There are models out there of what makes up a person. Here are 2 which I've encountered in the course of my education. One's from when I studied early childhood education, that there were 5 selves: physical, emotional, social, cognitive, and creative. And another from First Nation traditions when I was studying trauma and trauma healing: physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental. Now let's look at the Buddha's 5 aggregates or skandhas: form, sensations, perceptions, mental activity, formations and determinations, and consciousness. No matter which of these models resonates with you, they share a concept in common: that we are so much more than our physical forms. In our society, we are encouraged to think of the physical form as most important and everything else as a far second. This MMI crowd has a head start in that, almost by definition, Sangha members are aware of the importance of their non-physical aggregates. But we're up against a lot of propaganda to the contrary. Circling back to the story of the 4 sightings, I offer my secular take on it. I think of the story as a metaphor for how to live a good life based on where we place our attention. If we spend our time preoccupied with aging, illness, and death, Our physical form is our point of reference. What we fear, impermanence, becomes the focus of our lives because of our denial of it. I see the ascetic as a metaphor for freedom through care and attention to the non-physical aggregates. Let's move on to social media. If one works with teens, as I do, almost every conversation amongst staff concerned about kids eventually turns to social media. Most of us are probably aware of many concerns spanning from bullying to unhealthy body images, etc. But today, I'm only going to discuss one aspect of social media, and it's not one that typically comes up in conversation. As I sat this week considering social media, I recalled a talk I attended up at the Insight Meditation Society several years ago. The teacher spoke about world building and self-building. The takeaway was that through our stories, we build the world we inhabit and we build our sense of ourselves. So let's briefly review a teaching of non-self from the Buddha. In this discourse, the Buddha addresses each of the aggregates: form, feeling, perception, determination, and consciousness. And for each, he states, any kind, whatever, whether past, future, or presently arisen, whether gross or subtle, whether in oneself or external, whether inferior or superior, whether far or near, must, with right understanding how it is, be regarded thus. This is not mine. This is not I. This is not myself. Tying this back to social media, it seems to me that much social media activity is self-building. By posting images and content, we actively build a concept of who we are to present to others. This is pretty much the opposite of practicing non-self. Because of the tendency to curate out unpleasantness or neutrality, focusing on the favorable, and because all posts sit mostly unchanging over time, we can encounter challenges to our acceptance of impermanence, our equanimity regarding aging, and our practice of non-self. This is not to say that social media is bad, but spending too much time on social media, particularly mindlessly, may be counterproductive to our spiritual development. Before we look at some ideas for actions we can take, let's acknowledge some good news and cause for hope that perhaps society is attempting some sort of correction when it comes to our relationship with impermanence. For one thing, there are a lot of celebrities who are choosing to age naturally, right out there in public. There's Diane Keaton. There's also a movement for death education in schools, following the model of sex education decades ago. And for adults, there are death cafes where discussions about every aspect of aging and death are openly discussed. The Silver Sisters Club is the best known of many social media-based groups which support women in aging naturally. This means kids will start to see aging again. And finally, as you know, mindfulness is going mainstream. While this may bring with it some concerns about the effects of monetizing the teachings, it's encouraging that meditating in schools and workplaces have become commonplace, and spiritual practice has found a comfortable place in a secular culture. You may have noticed, and maybe even been disappointed by my not having tried to make the case that aging late in a long life is like sunshine and butterflies. It is not, but neither is birth, childhood, or any other stage of life. To me, this is about trying to take the focus off the anti-aging and self-building stories so we may actually fully experience our lives as we go along. Once we sit with our present experience, we'll probably notice that, like most parts of life, it has its ups and its downs. And this equanimity is the foundation of acceptance and peace. To me, this poem by Frida Kahlo is about all of life. Change was always the case. So, what can we do? The first two suggestions relate back to my talk a couple of weeks ago on equanimity and its near enemy, indifference. When considering impermanence, notice if indifference is present. If so, see if you can shift a bit toward equanimity. Thoughts like, we're going to die anyway, YOLO, you only live once, attitude, life's tough and then you die, basically nihilism. So, when considering impermanence, strive to practice equanimity. An example might be, I'm here for a limited time and I wish to optimize my ability to develop wisdom and compassion, so I will take care of this body. I wish to cultivate the non physical. There are a few eyes open practices that I would suggest. One is practicing mindfulness of thoughts and emotions. When we go to exercise or for any care of the physical body, perhaps notice what is here arising alongside self care. Are there negative thoughts? Just notice. And notice any anxiety or urgency in the body when we gear up for self care. If so, see if we can slow down and breathe. I apologize. Also, with eyes open, before exercising or engaging in body based self care, identify a mental, spiritual, emotional, social, or creative intention to pair with any physical intention. So, for example, my intention is to walk around the block once. While I'm walking, I will feel the feel of my feet on the floor or ground. Or I will lift these water bottles 10 times on each side, and then I will reach out to a friend to check in. Another suggestion is to notice if we're using negative thoughts about ourselves for motivation. Thoughts like, if I don't walk around the block once, I'm going to be angry at myself, so I better get going. It may be effective in the short run, but it's unkind. Other eyes open suggestions are to practice newness in a non physical area. This could be a small activity, a new author, TV show, or type of music, learning about a new charitable organization or group or club, even if you're not quite ready to join, trying a new recipe, perhaps playing around with the impermanence of likes and dislikes, noticing when we have rigidity around that, and just generally finding a little boundary and pushing just a bit. When on social media, when posting, notice what's arising. Just notice. If you're very active on social media, perhaps look at your last 5 posts and notice if there are any patterns. Notice if there's self building going on. When reading and responding to others' posts, notice what's present. And if you find your body feeling tense, breathe and take a break from it. While meditating with eyes closed, you can notice any preoccupation with aging and the physical self and ask the question, what is this? And working a metta practice into the meditation sitting can be very helpful as well. While meditating with eyes closed, you might consider adding this special metta practice. And if you feel comfortable doing so, if you just wanted to let your eyes close, and I'll just lead you through this. As we age, may we be filled with loving kindness. As we age, may we be free from suffering to the extent possible. And as we age, may we be happy and at peace. I leave you with this quotation from Robert Butler, the first director of the National Institute on Aging, and incidentally, the person who coined the phrase ageism. I believe that seniors should be activists. One has to keep on growing, working, and learning right to the end of life. The lesson from these scientific studies is clear. One must have a goal and continue to work toward it. It is all the better if the goal is something beyond oneself and has social good associated with it.